thank you, Janine and Ellen and Jasmine, for coordinating this and having safe, special places for women to gather and talk about their money, which I see, directly tied to sort of our embodied empowerment. And so I just want to do a quick question in the chat, if I could. Just curious, how many of you currently have direct investments, any kind of investment in a women-owned business or women-owned public equity, women-run, PACs, Adesina? How many of you actually are actively participating in gender lens investing? So if you are, great, I do. Okay. All right, we got excellent. Oh, wow. Okay, now, excellent. I would love to see if you would now follow up and just put the name of the product or institution or investment vehicle you're using. This is a great focus group to see where people are. But yes, How Women Invest. I'm a limited partner as well. Great. Julie and Erica's fund. Great. CEO, self-help. Yeah, a lot of How Women Invest people. Excellent. Oh, the Artemis Fund. Good one. Yeah, portfolio, Pax Elevate, CEO. Yeah, Alicia Robb, Next Wave Impact Fund. Okay, so why am I teaching this? Y'all know more than I do. You're all in the game. Love it. I love it. Okay, next question. Keep them coming. Wow. Screening indie stocks out fund screening. I want to know more about that, Eileen. C-Note, good one. Kiva. Oh, it's good to see all these. I don't see anyone with Adesina, the Justice Fund, JSTC. Golden Seeds, going way back in time. There's an Adesina. Yes. What percent of your investments do you think you currently have in gender? Because now that you're clearly the gold medalist in this space, I'm curious what these numbers are going to be. Like what percent of your investment? Very small. That's good. So we're in the Invest for Better circle and we're on session 3 or 4, and we're starting to assess where our values aligned investments are. So somebody, okay, we got 10%, less than 10%, 5% small, 20%, 75+%. Nice. Nice. Yeah, 401ks, that's another opportunity to redistribute. This is awesome. Seriously. Janine and Ellen and Jasmine, this is fabulous. I'm thrilled to be around my people. You all are already activating. Okay, well, I look forward to hopefully answering any questions you have after, but I'm going to take you through a presentation that will, touch on some various elements of the process. For those of you who are beginners, I can't do the math and figure out who's answered and who hasn't, but it feels like almost 100% of you are in this game and in this for all the right reasons and deploying your capital in all the smart ways that I know of and more. So excellent. I'm gonna pivot now. So keep your questions in your head, and some will come out as I present, I'm sure. And give me a second here. I'm gonna share my screen and we'll have a little conversation. So I look forward to talking to you, but first I thought it would be helpful for you to just always have an opportunity to start the slideshow. I'm a big fan of people sharing their money stories. So in that vein, I want to share a little bit about my personal story, because one of the ways we learn is we share insights, right? Which we just did. We shared a bunch of products that we're in. So just a little snapshot. Look at the little redhead who doesn't like being in the dress. That would be me. Youngest of 5. Mom was a trailblazer. In the 60s, she wanted to live very simply up in New Hampshire, left the Greenwich Corridor Strip and all that associated with that. And those are all homemade dresses made out of some upholstery material, so super comfortable. So the real theme here is waste not, want not. And the other theme we were raised with was, if you want something, you got to hustle for it. So in the spirit of hustling, I was honored over and over, never for the most valuable player, the most skilled player, but always the one who gave 110% or had the most desire to play. And so you see, I have knee pads on and I'm falling on the floor. And that's really, kind of what I've been doing my whole life, is just scrapping and hustling and playing in every type of asset class over the course of my lifetime. Thankfully, getting life insurance when I was healthy, thankfully being able to max out on my retirement plan when I worked at the Women's Sports Foundation for 15 years. And thankfully, and having an unexpected inheritance that allowed me to play in the alternative investment category of real estate. And so I've become the millionaire next door, which is shocking for me in that in my 30s, when I was making a little over 100,000 at a nonprofit, I was making more than my siblings and my parents combined. They all live a simple life. And so you can see that I've jumped class. And in that process, it's been quite a journey, and navigating all the emotions around that. And I know if you've been part of a circle, you've been able to explore that. And I continue to just challenge us all to keep telling our stories and keep learning as we grow. And I'm well aware that the privilege of my skin and my beauty has gotten me, as far as I've gotten. And I do appreciate that my hard work also got me an education, thanks to Title IX. So I'll move into the work that I do, which, as Janine teed up, I did write a couple of guides. The first one was really around funding with the gender lens, and teeing up the concept that we should be giving more than 1.6 of our philanthropic dollars to women and girls, which, believe it or not, it's gone down. It used to be about 6 or 7%. It's gone down significantly. And the beliefs of the guide are there, stated pretty straightforward, and Janine teed that up in my work. The second guide I did is really around gender lens investing, and where I tee up a lot of case studies and opportunities, and tee up the concept of a purpose portfolio, which was really created by Veris Wealth Partners and LM Carlisle, who created the concept of rather thinking about asset classes and where your money is held, but what is the purpose of your dollars? So as we, all of you leaders in gender lens investing yourselves, what percent are you giving into women's leadership? What percent are you giving into access to capital? What percent are you giving into safety, or whatever issue area for women means something to you? So it's another way of looking at your portfolio. So there's lots of resources in both guides. They're both on Creative Commons. They're available, downloadable, free. Share them widely. So the money moves, making money moves that matter is sort of the theme of the Women in Money community that I've been gestating with lots of good folks, and really trying to get people to embrace this moral imperative to invest in women and showcase all the fierce actors in the space, and then get people to move to action. I call Suzanne Beagle, Joy Anderson, and Jackie Vanderberg sort of the grandmothers and godmothers of this movement. I had the privilege of meeting them almost 9 years ago at a Criterion event. And Jackie spoke, and it was the first time I had met her, and she literally wrote the first book. I think it is the sort of seminal book on gender lens investing, and it really speaks to in the investment community and people in finance to understand the concept of the viewfinder and different ways we can deploy capital. Suzanne and others have sort of created these goals that you can use to think about deploying your money, as I just said, advancing women in leadership. Obviously, there's a lot of different places and spaces that are doing that now. Increasing women's access to capital. Some of you are playing in that field already with portfolio or angel investing, golden seeds. Securing gender equity in the workplace. Thankfully, the forced arbitration is a recent win for us in that space. Eliminating that practice in employment spaces. And how do we address urgent gender equity issues that are upon us, reproductive justice being one of them, and gender-based violence, where there's a lot of funds going. I would also say climate justice is being elevated as a gendered issue, and lots of climate tech opportunities are available. And the last one, I think, is where I feel, really a kinship with all of you in the Invest for Better community, is because I feel like that's what, Janine and Ellen and Jasmine and the team are doing. And I'm honored to be a circle leader, because we're just, let's move to action, people. Let's mobilize our money. And so where can you dig deeper? For those of you who haven't bought into this concept, although I think I'm preaching to the choir, but these might be statistics that you could use as you try and convert some colleagues, friends, advisors who haven't bought into this concept. But these are data and statistics that I share when I speak to remind people that this is an urgent crisis. It has a race lens to it, and we need to step up and mobilize our money accordingly. Sexual violence is a public health crisis. It's Maternal Health Week, Black Maternal Health Week. We know that Black babies die in the US at a rate 2.5 times higher than that of white babies. 48% of people who are incarcerated in the US are Black, yet Blacks make up only 13% of the population. Elder care, child care, frontline care workers, and the work of teachers is insanely undervalued. And we've seen that through COVID and the structural racism that has been revealed. So if you're not investing to offset these crises, step up and step in. So the first thing I talk about when we start thinking about shifting your investments or thinking about what is your philosophy and belief system behind it. And my favorite examples of this is mostly from women's funds that are doing great leadership work in this area. Ms. Foundation, the Texas Women's Foundation are out there with 100% gendered investments through their endowment and their corpus. And the Equality Fund, which is based in Canada, and they put together this recent statement that I thought was super fierce. The Equality Fund uses gender lens investing to drive the catalytic role that investments can play to create more sustainable income through incorporating gender lens metrics to a multi-asset class portfolio. In choosing to do this, the Equality Fund challenges and disrupts the status quo on how capital is deployed, by whom and to whom. My sense is that most of you probably believe in that. You could adopt it or modify it slightly, and it would sing true to your heart. The next thing that people often consider when you're starting to really get serious about your investments from a social justice lens is thinking about a thesis. And obviously, my thesis, as Janine said, is, focused on women of color, and queer and lesbian women. So this is an example from a great project that's based in India and is focused on really sort of funding entrepreneurship and demonstrates why they believe that to be true. And I would argue that this thesis, again, is adaptable for all of us and modified for the US and other countries, because all of these data points are true. Women are continuing to control increasing consumer spending power, and as we all know, are getting more and more wealth transfer in the coming years. Entrepreneurship is well suited for work flexibility. We know that now, that is the new way of work right now, and that women-led companies consistently outperform. Catalyst has done data for decades. Now, many others have done their own data against it, but predominantly we know that minimally 53% higher return on equity when women are in leadership. So this is an example of an investment thesis. This is the purpose portfolio. I said this is actually directly taken from the Moving Money for Impact guide. And this is the Texas Women's Foundation, and they shared this purpose portfolio about how they mobilize their capital based on their thematic areas of grant making. So they have aligned their investment dollars in their grant making, which is, such a simple concept that what is there, 800 billion in foundation endowments, 800 billion. Hypothetically, I'm going to throw out the concept that maybe, 2 to 5% of it is actually aligned with their mission and vision and values and thematic areas that they grant make. It's still new in the philanthropic world for people to step into and live with an intentional endowment. There is a whole organization called Intentional Endowments that's trying to raise that concept. But I can count on two hands foundations that I know that are doing that wholeheartedly, 100% all in. So the work is to move to action. If you don't already know about these reports, and I'll send this PowerPoint to everybody, and there's links to all these documents, but the public equities, you know, a lot of times you might have advisors, or you've heard advisors say to your colleagues or friends or people in your circle, you know, I'm not sure I can find you any opportunities in public equities that have a gender lens. Well, the Veris report shows those. And if you are getting into the private investment space, the Project Sage report, I think there's over 200 pages this year in the report of opportunities with a gender lens private investment. You know, you all are a converted crowd. I don't need to tell you to put money into C-Note, NIA Global Capital. She's coming out hopefully with a mutual fund soon that we'll all be able to access. Addisina, we already talked about. CEO, of course. There's a lot of limited partners here in How Women Invest, et cetera, et cetera. So you're all moving to action. You hopefully all know about As You Sow, where you can assess. I think Janine and the Invest for Better community has teed this up. They just started adding racial justice, which is a critical component for us to consider as we look at where our money is housed. And then finally, I think, you know, what I've said at the beginning is, you know, share your money story with pride. And, you know, also being aware of what biases that society and the unhealthy systems of structural racism, structural and sexism have put on you. So for the inhibitors and accelerators of your money journey, it's important for us to name them, especially as white women. I think, you know, we're all learning to have courageous conversations about values, power, and social impact with key people who engage or interact with your money. So I think it's one thing that you all, I think it's great that you all are doing this. Now, you know, how do we get you to be sort of evangelistic about it and tell all the folks who are in your circle managing your money, your accountant, your lawyers, your if you have an advisor, you know, make sure they're aware of the products you're using. And then, you know, keep moving your money with a focus on LGBTQ and Black, Indigenous women of color. I always like to close and remind ourselves that we're not doing this work. We're standing on the shoulders of many fierce leaders. My maternal side of my family is super strong and fierce, and these women, Maya Angelou, Adrienne Reach, Carolyn Helbrun, and Gloria Steinem, all have wise words for us to remember as we move through this world. And that would be all I would share, and because I'm much more intrigued to hear what your questions are. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Tuti. Well, I'm going to ask a question of you. You asked everybody what percentage of their investments was in gender and what some of their favorite investments were there. So I'm going to ask the same thing of you. How much of your portfolio is in gender, and what are some of the things that you like the most?
If I love Addisina, you're going to crack up, but I'm still learning exactly where my whole retirement fund is. I'm that person who's slowly going through that process and figuring out how to move a variable annuity that's inside Northwest Mutual to a home that can move it to the places I want. I'm having this has been my Invest for Better journey and my goal as a leader, and I've shared this with the group. And I actually almost want to capture our interactive email exchanges that I've been going through with this woman, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And I'm pretty learned in this space, right? And I'm a pretty decent questioner. But suffice it to say, all of my liquid cash that I have accessible to me is 100% gender lens invested. My large retirement fund is in a balanced portfolio at Northwest Mutual that I am looking forward to moving to a new firm when I learn about the process.
You know what I did with earlier this year, I took an IRA that I had and I moved it into a self-directed IRA. So I cashed it out. I moved it into self-directed IRA. Didn't have to do that, but I did. And it's all now going to go into private debt, private equity, investing in female CEOs.
Awesome.
So that's something a lot of people don't know about, the whole self-directed IRA option. It's a little bit harder to manage, but I'm finding it's not as bad as I thought. It's pretty easy so far. I'm about to do my second investment tomorrow, probably. Actually, that one's not in a woman, it's in a man, I hate to say, but mostly it's all going to women.
Nice. Love that. It would be awesome to, I don't know if you've thought of this already, Janine, but to have people actually share their portfolios. Like that was, so in the guide, in the Moving Money for Impact guide, I had 5 different people, foundations, philanthropists, institutions, share where their money was held. And I did not ask them to list assets or dollars.
Just
It
what
was
it
done
is.
schematically, visually, mapping such. So I still think you could do it, but I do think people want to see, like,
It helps.
what are your top 10 favorite investments? You know, what are yours? What are Jackie Vanderbilt? What are Jackie Zahner's? You know, Suzanne Beagle's. You know, Suzanne has hers posted on her website, which is awesome. But what it'd be great if we could have many, many, many more of those.
No, I think it's a great idea. And it actually leads me to another question I had, and we'll open it up to everybody to ask questions. But the guide that you wrote, it's 54 pages long, just so that people know that. But why did you write it? What was your intention? Who'd you write it for? And what were you hoping to achieve through putting it out there in the world?
Yes. So, so it's kind of a shift. I've had my consulting firm for 15 years. For half of the time, it was called Imagine Philanthropy. And so the concept, I was working in philanthropy and I was trying to get mostly people in the women's funding space, the Women's Funding Network members, anybody sort of moving their money with a gender lens to sort of imagine it to be, you know, impactful, fun, and more bold, right? And so I got involved with Women Moving Millions community, and then I learned this data point. And again, you have to remember my humble background. I learned that philanthropy was $400 billion, and I thought that's a lot of money. But then I learned that holiday shopping was $450 billion just for that one season of the year, and we spent more money on coffee cups and stupid sweaters than we do on the love of humankind. And it was an aha moment. And so then I started to say, okay, Tuti, you really need to start, you know, I was all about coaching and motivating and facilitating and talking. I wasn't a numbers person. I never paid attention to numbers. I was always, as a fundraiser, I would coach people. It's not about how much money you're raising. It's about the number of people you're talking to and the depth of your relationships. That's what you measure. And that's what breeds success. And I still believe that. So for me to pay attention to numbers, and then I saw that there was like 70 trillion moving in the capital markets. And I was like, wait a minute, 400 billion. Okay. So then I said, I'm the person apparently who's going to get this sort of women's philanthropic community to wake up and realize that there's this other place that we need to play in. That's, most of us have some sort of, if we're privileged, have some sort of resources invested in. And so I wrote the guide thinking about a women's fund donor, a women's fund board member, you know, some sort of feminist who's going, I think I should be doing something with my money. What should I do with it? And so it was really like an entry-level guide. I wrote it, tried to make it accessible. I put a lot of visuals in it. Doesn't have dense text because I wanted it to be like a beginner journey. And now, you know, the resources continue to spread in terms of places and spaces where people can do it. And then your book is, you know, much more, it's the textbook, it's the handbook. It's going to walk me through it. Mine is like, let me get my appetite wet. Let me see if I'm even into this game. Is it really viable? Why should I do it? So.
Well, we'll put a link so that women know where to find that if they want it. They can download it for free in electronic form, and they can also get a hard copy, I think, for a couple dollars or something.
There's a few left. Yeah.